Imagine standing in the forest long after the sun has gone down. The trail you followed is gone, swallowed by roots and shadow. Your flashlight beam catches only trunks packed together like silent onlookers. There is no traffic noise, no cabin lights through the branches, only the constant hush of leaves and your own breathing. Somewhere between one step and the next, you realize how far you are from help. Phones fail here. Voices do not carry. If you scream, the trees will listen, but no one else. Tonight we are going there. Into 3 real cases where the deep woods closed around people who never truly came back. Hikers who ran from something no one could see. Children who vanished within sight of their families. Students who walked into green tunnels of forest and were erased. These are not campfire stories. These are names in police files, search grids on official maps, bones found where search teams swore they had already looked. Our first story begins not in a dense green forest, but in a frozen one, a treeline at the edge of Russia's northern Ural Mountains. In January 1959, 9 experienced hikers from the Ural Polytechnical Institute set out across a wilderness so remote that local Monsey people called one nearby slope Kolit, often translated as Dead Mountain. What happened to them there still disturbs investigators, searchers, and forensic experts more than 60 years later. They were led by 23-year-old Igor Dyatlov, an engineering student passionate about winter trekking. His group, 7 men and 2 women, carried diaries and cameras, carefully documenting their journey across snowfields and sparse forest. They were aiming for O'Torton, a remote peak, and expected to be gone 2 weeks. When Dyatlov failed to send the planned telegram announcing their return to the city of Sverdlovsk, families first felt irritation, then a slow, spreading fear. These were not careless tourists. Most were almost professionals, certified in difficult expeditions, comfortable far from civilization. On February 20th, 1959, volunteer students and military searchers finally located the group's abandoned tent high on the slope of Kolit. It was half buried in snow, badly slashed open from the inside, equipment neatly arranged as if the hikers had left in a hurry, but not in chaos. Tracks in the snow, later photographed and measured, showed that several people had walked away from the tent in socks or bare feet, heading down toward the dark line of forest below. No other footprints, human or animal, were visible in hundreds of meters of new snow. Searchers followed the trail to the trees and found the first 2 bodies beneath a cedar, barefoot, dressed only in underwear, skin darkened by cold, and the remains of a fire. 3 more appeared between the cedar and the tent, as if they had tried to crawl back uphill. Months later, when the snow melted, the remaining 4 were discovered in a ravine deeper in the forest. Some had crushed chests without external bruising, 1 lacked her tongue, and traces of radiation were detected on clothing. Autopsy reports listed causes as hypothermia and unknown compelling force. No single explanation has ever satisfied the official files or the families. In 2019, Russian prosecutors reviewed the case again, but their avalanche conclusion has not silenced the unease. 10 years after Dyatlov, on June 14, 1969, 6-year-old Dennis Lloyd Martin disappeared in broad daylight inside Great Smoky Mountains National Park, on the border of Tennessee and North Carolina. It was Father's Day weekend. The Martin family had hiked into a grassy highland called Spence Field, surrounded on all sides by dense hardwood forest and steep ridges. Dennis was last seen wearing a bright red shirt, an easy color to spot against green, as he played a simple game of hide-and-seek with other children near the tree line. His father watched him step behind a small clump of bushes. Less than 5 minutes later, Dennis did not step back out. According to official reports and ranger testimony, William Martin immediately started calling for his son and running along the trail, fearing a bear or stranger might have grabbed him. Within hours, park rangers organized a search. Over the next week, more than 1,000 people combed the surrounding woods. Volunteers, Boy Scouts, bloodhounds, even a team of Special Forces soldiers practicing high-country operations. Helicopters flew low over the ridges. Searchers formed human chains, sweeping through laurel thickets so thick they had to crawl. Night brought fog and heavy rain that washed out tracks and soaked the little boy's chances of survival. Despite grid searches covering miles of deep forest, searchers never found a shoe, a scrap of red cloth, or a body. One of the most disturbing details comes from a separate family hiking that same afternoon. The Key family, according to FBI-recorded interviews, reported hearing a terrible scream in the woods and seeing what Mr. Key described as a rough-looking man moving quickly through the trees, apparently carrying something over his shoulder. Miscommunication and delays meant the exact location of that sighting was not compared with Dennis's disappearance until days later. No suspect was ever identified. The official conclusion was that Dennis likely died of exposure, his remains scattered or hidden by animals in the rough terrain. Yet retired Ranger Dwight McCarter has said the search was so intensive that it still haunts him that nothing of the child was ever recovered. For Dennis's family, there is no grave in those mountains, only a date on a missing person file and a line of forest they can never stop seeing. On December 1, 1946, 18-year-old college student Paula Welden left her dorm at Bennington College in Vermont and walked toward a trailhead at the edge of campus. Witnesses later told police she was headed for a popular section of the Long Trail, a hiking path that cuts through miles of rugged Green Mountain forest. She wore a red parka, jeans, and lightweight sneakers, not ideal for winter, but the afternoon was clear and cool, with snow only in patches. Several motorists and hikers later reported seeing her walking alone along Route 9 and onto the trail, always moving steadily toward deeper woods. No one saw her turn back. When Paula failed to return to her dorm that night, roommates assumed she had stayed in town. By the next day, the college contacted her parents and local authorities. Vermont had no state police at the time, so the search was initially disorganized. Local sheriff's deputies, students, and townspeople pushing into the forest with little coordination. Over the following weeks, hundreds of people searched the Long Trail and surrounding woods with dogs, National Guard troops, and aircraft. Newspapers published her photograph across New England. Yet there were almost no physical clues. One man claimed he had argued with a young woman fitting Paula's description on the trail. Another witness later thought he had seen her at a bus stop. None of the leads held. No clothing, bones, or personal items have ever been conclusively linked to her. Paula's father, Arch Welden, refused to accept that his daughter had simply wandered off the trail and died unseen. He hired private detectives, followed tips into neighboring states, and publicly criticized local officials for mistakes in the crucial early days of the search. The case helped push Vermont to create its first statewide police force so that no future disappearance would be handled so unevenly. Officially, Paula is listed as missing, presumed dead in the surrounding wilderness. Unofficially, her disappearance became the centerpiece of what writers later called the Bennington Triangle, a cluster of strange vanishings in the same forests. What remains on record, however, is brutally simple: an open trail, a girl in red, and then nothing. 3 places, 3 different landscapes: a snow-choked slope in Russia, a fog-soaked ridge in Tennessee, a cold green corridor in Vermont. In each of them, the wilderness swallowed people in ways that feel wrong to our sense of how the world is supposed to work. Tents should protect you. Bright red clothing should stand out. Trails should lead back to the car park and the warm yellow windows of home. But sometimes they lead to a line where human presence ends and something else begins. Cold, distance, the sheer indifference of thousands of trees watching in silence. Investigators bring clipboards, maps, and measuring tapes into these spaces, trying to push the unknown back with evidence. They take photographs of footprints, publish missing person bulletins, call families into rooms with fluorescent lights and bad coffee. Years later, many of them still dream of empty forests, of calling a child's name until their voice breaks, of body bags lifted from helicopter skids. Meanwhile, the trails remain open. Hikers walk where others vanished and have no idea what lies just beyond the splash of their headlamps.